Order, order. Nick Timothy to move the motion.
Thank you, Sir Edward. I beg to move that this House has considered government support for the horse racing industry. And thank you. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and I thank everybody for attending today's debate. I know it's a Thursday, and people have shuffled their diaries to attend, but I know that honourable members have done that because of the importance of the industry to all of our constituencies and to the country. Racing is, after football, the second most watched sport in the country. Around 6 million people attend the races every year. Among them are people of all ages, 40% are women, and contrary to myth, racing is a cross-class sport. Not that we want to use this debate to define working people. And British racing is undoubtedly an international success story. 4 of the top 10 races in the world are held here, more than any other country. We have the best bloodstock, our races attract the best horses, and Britain has some of the finest trainers as well as horses, including modern legends such as Frankel and Enable. Like all sports, racing is a business, and it brings huge economic benefits. The industry is estimated to generate £4.1 billion in direct, indirect and associated expenditure every year. Around 85,000 people are employed at racecourses, training yards, breeding operations and in the betting industry. In Newmarket, racing brings more than 7,000 jobs and generates hundreds of millions of pounds per year for the local economy.
On that point?
I give way.
Thank you. I thank my honourable friend for raising such an important topic. Now, I'm delighted to have Ludlow Racecourse, and if you do ever get a chance, I'd welcome you to Iton Races. It'll be a great day out. But the importance you raise around the local economy is key. And do you agree with me that the lack of clear way forward and support from the government at this stage is creating uncertainty in horse racing?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for his intervention, and I'm sure all of us would look forward to a trip to Ludlow to experience the racing there. I think, if I'm honest, and I say this as a Conservative, it's true that this issue has actually dragged on for a while, and I'll be turning to some questions for the Minister shortly, but time is of the essence. But I thank my honourable friend. As so often with Britain, part of the draw, especially for international investors, trainers and spectators, is our history and tradition. Racing in this country dates back more than 3 centuries. Thoroughbred racing was first created here, and the association with royalty, which continues with His Majesty the King, and I know I'm sitting next to the most ardent of monarchists in the House of Commons, only adds to this prestige. And yet the success story is strangely neglected. To those who don't know the industry, it can appear sometimes to be something of a caricature, with horses selling for millions, breeders paying hundreds of thousands of pounds for a particular stallion to cover a mare, and aristocrats and royals prominent in their patronage. But the reality of racing, unfortunately, is that its future is far more precarious. Many breeders and trainers operate on tight margins, and as many honourable members here today will affirm, any conversation with them turns quickly to prize money. A horse that wins the top-tier British race increases its future breeding value, but the immediate return is limited compared to Australia, Ireland and France, where racing benefits from government support, and Japan and the United States, where there's simply more money around. The prize fund for the Dubai Turf, for example, is £4.5 million, and the All-Star Mile in Australia, £2.7 million. The Queen Anne Stakes in Ascot, which is a fair equivalent, offers £600,000. And the same is true for the less famous races, at an average of £16,000 to be divided by all placed horses. Prize money across the board is just much lower here than in competitor markets. Lower down the pyramid, most races pay less than £5,000 to the winner. Owner expenditure far outstrips the total prize money up for grabs in British racing. And this is down to how the industry is funded. In Japan and Hong Kong, where betting is generally banned, there are exceptions for horse racing and some other sports because they're seen as being run efficiently and by government departments. This means proportionately more bets are placed on horse racing than elsewhere, and in both places the industry controls the gambling. In France, prize money is underwritten by the Paris Mutuelle Urbain. which enjoys a monopoly on betting. In Australia, where prize money has almost doubled in a decade, it's funded mostly through a betting tax. In Ireland, more than 2/3 of prize money comes direct from the Irish government. Our system, though, is different. Here the funds come from media rights and executive contributions from racecourses, owners' entry fees and the betting levy, a 10% tax on bookmakers' profits from bets placed on races staged within Britain. Around 1/3 of prize money comes from the levy. But income is falling. Over the past 2 years, the industry estimates that betting turnover on British racing has fallen by over 1.5 billion and could be as low as £7 billion this year. The Horse Racing Betting Levy Board says falling turnover is unlikely to prove a positive for the sport's long-term health, and I agree. Nobody expects us to adopt a Japanese or a French model, but I want to ask the Minister some clear questions about how things might be changed so we can put racing onto a sustainable footing and make sure we retain our place as the best place in the world to breed, train and race horses. So first, can the Minister, this is probably the easiest of my questions, can the Minister join us all present today in agreeing that the British horse racing industry is an undoubted international success story, a source of British soft power around the world and home to many vital community assets in regional towns here at home? And that we must therefore do everything in our power to make sure it continues to prosper. Second, will the Minister confirm today that the government will not go back to square one and will instead pick up where their predecessors left off? Because in May, the Horse Racing Authority agreed with DCMS that the levy should be increased to 11.5% to create a growth fund to market and promote British racing at home and abroad, and to hold an independent review of the racing funding model. We don't have... I will give way.
To my honourable friend for securing this debate, and him and I are co-chairs of the all-party group on racing and bloodstock. And one of the reasons it's so important that we do get more money into racing is because, as an industry, there are so many people employed throughout the sport for whom racing is their livelihood, but the sheer commitment and lifestyle that they have to lead in order to do the work that they do requires, in order to make sure that they are in decent, well-paid jobs as well. We need more. We cannot have racing squeezed, as could be the case in the years ahead.
I completely agree with the honourable gentleman. The truth is that the racing industry is connected to so many different associated industries and so many different kinds of jobs. And as I said earlier, when sometimes people see some of the large sums that are spent on investing in bloodstock and so on, they don't see that actually the industry rests upon many thousands of people, many of whom are on low incomes. I will give way.
I'm very grateful to my honourable friend for giving way, and thank him and congratulate him on bringing up this debate, which is well attended for a Thursday. He knows my interests, my family. I'm about the only one who's not involved in racing, and my father was a national hunt jockey. Would he agree with me that from the 2,000 guineas in the Derby right down to the small trainers, the small tracks, the point-to-points, I have Fakenham in just outside my constituency, and the rural economy, the pony clubs, there's an equine economy that goes right across this country, but it relies on money trickling down from the top. And furthermore, agree that racing's finances are not just unhealthy, they're in crisis. And I just wanted to support him in asking, does he agree with me that this government, we'll hear from the Minister, this is a problem that goes across a lot of Labour constituencies as well. We really need to see a strong steer from the government in order to prevent the further decline of racing's finances.
Well, I agree emphatically with my honourable friend, and I don't think this is a matter of party politics at all, actually. We're all in this room, regardless of our party badges, because we know the importance of horse racing to our constituents and to our local economies and to the country. And a lot of the beneficiaries of the British horse racing industry reside in rural and semi-rural areas and regional towns. And we spend a lot of time talking in this House about how we're going to improve the regional economy, and this is a really important part of that economy. So I was saying that we don't have time to go backwards. My third question, as part of the work I referred to, is will the Minister commit in this debate to the principle of a higher levy? In 2022-23, The levy raised £105 million, but the British Horse Racing Authority estimates that an indexed yield of at least £133.5 million is needed for a sustainable future for racing. And fourth, will the government reform the way the levy works? It's anomalous and nonsensical that the levy should apply to bets placed here on the races in this country, but not on bets placed here on races held overseas. This doesn't happen in the likes of Ireland and France, who both derive significant income from the best British meetings, and we're penalising our own industry. I noted that the Gambling Minister, Baroness Twycross, has committed to making sure that the levy is administered efficiently to best support racing, and I think this is a vital part of that commitment. The fifth question, following the Secretary of State's encouragements that, quotes, "we cannot believe everything we read in the newspapers," as somebody who sometimes writes in the Daily Telegraph, I demur, but there we are. Can the Minister rule out... Can the Minister rule out today the reported Treasury plan to increase taxes on bookmakers? If the idea is to crack down on problem gambling, such a blanket policy would be like using a sledgehammer to crack a nut and would obviously damage the racing industry. Sixth, and finally, which the Chair might be grateful to hear, knowing the Secretary of State rightly wants to strike the right balance to prevent problem gambling while also protecting the racing industry and responsible gambling, which she says brings joy to many people, will the government commit today to ensuring proportionality in its efforts to stop problem gambling? Even though Parliament hasn't legislated for affordability checks, as the gambling review has dragged on, bookmakers are operating pilot checks at the behest of the Gambling Commission. The idea was that these checks would be frictionless, and we were told that 8 in 10 people placing bets would never undergo checks. But we know punters are being asked to provide bank statements and pay slips to prove they can afford their bets. Nobody wants to see problem gambling go untackled, but the rate of problem gambling on horse racing is comparable to that of many national lottery products. And affordability checks are already driving people away from the legal betting on horse racing and onto the ever-growing black market offshore through online accounts, where, of course, there are no safeguards at all. While the numbers for viewing and attendance at races is at least the same as it was before affordability checks, we know that betting turnover and therefore racing income is down by 20% in 2 years. Independent analysis for the Racecourse Association has forecast a £250 million hit to racing over the next 5 years, and the BHA says 1 in 7 jobs in the sport could be lost because of this issue alone. We need to appreciate the difference between gambling on racing or other sports and the fixed margin gambling online and in casinos that drives so much addiction and suffering. If we don't, it will be to the detriment of the racing industry and the enjoyment, employment and prosperity it brings to so many. And so I look forward to hearing from the Minister.
The question is that this House has considered government support for the horse racing industry. Now, if we're going to get everybody in, we'll start with an informal time limit, but please don't speak for more than 5 minutes. Keep an eye on the clock, please. Graham Morris.
Very much said, but it's very kind of you to call me so early in this debate, and I would like to declare an interest as Vice Chairman of the all-party group on horse racing and bloodstock, and thank you, Sir Edward. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship as Father of the House and custodian of the time limits and procedures, so I appreciate the advice, and I will stick to the required 5 minutes maximum. I would also like to congratulate the Honourable Member for West Suffolk for securing this very important and timely debate. I've always been a firm supporter of the horse racing industry. It may be the sport of kings, but it is a sport that is loved by many thousands, if not millions, of working class people. A sport that is not only part of our rich cultural heritage, it's also a vital part of our economic engine, especially for more rural communities and for towns in areas like mine. But we have something like 59 racecourses across England, Scotland and Wales. And as was mentioned a little earlier, the industry draws almost 5 million spectators each year. I was actually surprised by the numbers. And we all know of events like Royal Ascot, the Cheltenham Festival, the Grand National at Aintree, represented by my good and honourable friend, and indeed the Ebor meeting at York, These are world-renowned, attracting people from all walks of life who appreciate the opportunity to visit in person. However, smaller, maybe less famous racecourses are of equal or perhaps more importance to local communities. The Honourable Member mentioned his race course in Ludworth. Not one I'm familiar with, but perhaps at some point in the future. And indeed, we're blessed with many such race courses in my region, Hexham in the north of the region, and Sedgefield, which is the race course nearest to my constituency in County Durham, all play a crucial role in supporting the regional economy. And of course, I must mention Newcastle Racecourse, the home of the Pitman's Derby, the Northumberland Plate, and soon the Fighting Fifth as well. And as we've heard, annually horse racing contributes a not insubstantial £4.1 billion to the UK, supporting over 85,000 jobs. And it's actually the second largest spectator sport after football. It plays a significant role in rural areas, offering employment, boosting tourism, and sustaining industries, not just directly that are involved in horse breeding and horse racing, but as was mentioned earlier, supports so many jobs in catering, in transport, in hospitality. However, as we're all aware, and as was mentioned, the industry is facing economic challenges, many of which stem from previous policy decisions, as recognised in the 2023 Gambling White Paper. And indeed, as a result, it is accepted that reforms are necessary to ensure the sustainable future of this crucial sector. And I must repeat that one of the most pressing issues, and I'm sure the Minister is fully aware of this, is the need to reform the horse race betting levy. It's absolutely crucial for funding prize money, but not just prize money to attract the best entrants. It also funds equine welfare and veterinary science. And while the levy was due for review in this year, the process has been delayed because of the general election. And in May, my understanding is that an agreement was reached between the British Horse Racing Authority and the Department for Culture, Media and Sport to reform the levy, including increasing the rate to 11.5%. I'm sure the Minister is going to say a little bit more about this in her response to the debate. But it would create a growth fund to promote racing both domestically and internationally. And if I may, I would gently encourage the Minister to continue engaging constructively with the British Horse Racing Authority to build on the important earlier discussions. And my understanding is the British Horse Racing Authority are eager to return to negotiations as soon as possible to secure a sustainable future and a sustainable funding model. Additionally, I completely agree with the comments that were made earlier, including interventions, that it's been argued that the levy should apply to all racing globally that is bet on by British punters, by British customers. This is based on an international precedent. I'm not quite sure why that hasn't happened earlier. It might be technology, and technology is advanced to make it possible now, and it would bring us in line with other leading nations, particularly with Ireland, and help to ensure the sport's long-term viability. So, in conclusion, Mr. Lee, horse racing is a vital part of Britain's economy, and indeed part of our culture. It provides jobs, supports rural employment, attracts global attention and publicity. However, as I and other colleagues have addressed today, it does face serious challenges that can be resolved through the horse race betting levy reforms. I'm confident that our new Labour government and our new minister, our new ministerial team, will work with the industry, addressing the changes that are necessary and ensuring the sport continues to thrive for years to come.
Sarah Dyke.
Thank you, Sir Edward. It's a pleasure to serve with you in the chair, and I congratulate the Honourable Member for West Suffolk for securing this important debate. Last week, I was lucky enough to attend the season opener at Wincanton Races, located in my constituency, Glastonbury and Somerton. And I found it a hugely valuable experience being there to be able to discuss the issues of trainers, jockeys, owners and those watching the races alike. British horse racing is an industry worth £4.1 billion a year to the UK economy, as the Honourable Member said. But most of this comes from mega wealthy bettors who can afford to make substantial bets. Now, it is right that the Liberal Democrats have committed to implementing affordability checks, but it is vital that those checks protect vulnerable problem gamblers and their families rather than deterring wealthy players who help underpin the sport. One analysis shows that enhanced financial risk checks in horse racing, if implemented badly, could result in the sport losing £50 million a year. Similarly, British Horse Racing Authority survey suggests that 40% of bettors would turn to the black market if affordability checks were too stringent. Given remote betting turnover, which accounts for at least 70% of all betting, continues to decline, the industry cannot afford to see this level of financial support just walk away. So the government must work with the industry to implement robust and frictionless affordability checks. Racecourses, training yards and breeding operations are largely based in rural areas like Wincanton and play an important economic role in rural areas. 20,000 people are directly employed by the horse racing industry, and another 65,000 jobs in supply chains are supported by it. There is a real opportunity for the government to ensure local people in rural areas are able to access these jobs by boosting the availability and take-up of apprenticeships, by expanding higher vocational training. The lower apprentice rate should also be scrapped to guarantee that everyone working in the horse racing industry receives at least the national minimum wage. This is particularly important in rural areas like Glastonbury and Somerton, which still typically need to spend an additional 10 to 20% more on everyday requirements than those in urban areas due to the rural premium. We should not forget that horse racing also plays an important cultural and social role at the heart of rural communities like mine. In Glastonbury and Somerton, charities like Racing to School are doing valuable work to provide curriculum-based visits to Wincanton Racecourse for local schools, and a day at the races is an important way for many, including elderly, to socialise in rural communities. So I urge the government to strike a balance between protecting these vulnerable groups and the harms of problem gambling and ensuring they aren't unduly deterred from the sport. Now, Sir Edward, coming from a farming family and having ridden horses for much of my life, I also cared deeply about the welfare of the horses that are at the heart of the industry. The UK has some of the highest welfare standards in the world, including in horse racing, but I fear that this may slip unless this government takes steps to address the domestic vet shortage. Half of vets leaving the industry have only been in the profession for less than 4 years, and recruitment and retention is significantly more challenging in rural areas like Glastonbury and Somerton. So to conclude, Sir Edward, I would urge the government to work with the horse racing industry to introduce real safeguards and guardrails that support the progress that the industry has already made, such as the Betting and Gaming Council's new voluntary code on consumer checks. The priority must always be to protect problem gamblers from being exploited by predatory gambling companies, rather than saddling the horse racing industry with tax rises to fix the financial mess left behind by the previous Conservative government.
Anne Carden.
Thank you, Sir Edward, for your chairmanship of today's debate. It's a pleasure to be able to contribute. Can I refer members to my declaration in the Register of Members' Interests and congratulate my honourable friend, the member for West Sussex, for securing this debate again. He has an extraordinary constituency with Newmarket in it, and I think I haven't been to Newmarket since I was about 10 or 11 years of age when I went to see a sales taking place. My godfather took me to, and I'm hoping I can go and relive that experience at some point soon. But I've loved horse racing since I was a child. My dad, who was a dock worker, would take me to local racecourses. I didn't grow up in the countryside. I grew up in the city of Liverpool. And he'd take me to Haydock Racecourse and Aintree Racecourse. And the first Grand National I was ever able to attend was when Red Marauder won, and only 4 horses finished the Grand National out of 40. Red Marauder, Smarty, Blowing Wind and Papillon. And it was an absolute bog filled of water, and 2 of those had to remount to get to the finish. But it was an event that hooked me onto horse racing because it was so extraordinary. So the Honourable Member and I now chair the All-Party Horse Racing Group. And our first meeting of this group in Parliament was attended by well over 20 of our colleagues as well. And I think that and the attendance today on a Thursday for this debate just shows how highly the sport is considered. I'm incredibly proud to represent the Walton constituency, now with the Aintree Racecourse in it, home of one of the greatest races in the world, watched by over 600 million people globally, the Grand National. And the economic contribution of the Grand National is well over £60 million, the 3-day race meeting. But Aintree Racecourse is also a world-class sporting facility. It's part of the local community. It has strong relationships, some of you will know, with Alderhay Hospital, with Park Palace Ponies, with some of our schools and educational establishments. And there is so much more potential that I think our racecourses in our communities have for positive and meaningful social impact, especially in urban areas. The potential for young people to benefit from alternatives to the classroom, for skills and apprenticeships, and alternative fulfilling careers. Racing can play a role in helping this government deliver its ambitions for its national mission for growth. And whatever the challenges British horse racing faces, it will always benefit from its prestige, its century-old thoroughbred history, from Eclipse to Frankel, Ascot Racecourse that was founded in 1711. Horse racing bridges the class divides, and for so many reasons, all of us want British horse racing to thrive into the future. And for the people that we've already mentioned who work in that industry, for them it is a labour of love, of dedication, and it really is a total life commitment. The Honourable Member for West Suffolk has done an excellent job of putting on the record the comparatively low prize money on offer here in Britain today compared to other countries, which have different funding models, so I don't need to repeat what he has said. But the current system, the reliance on media rights, racecourse contributions, owners and the levy, with the reported decline in that betting turnover, leaves the industry now looking precarious. And it represents a real concern for all of those who rely on it. As much as all of those in leadership roles in the industry have, so do we in this place. And I think my message to the Minister is to say that she has a responsibility now to be a good custodian alongside her colleagues, and we as a Labour government have a responsibility to be custodians of this industry for the future. British racing is British soft power. It creates bonds between states, not just our neighbours in France and Ireland, but countries that have been mentioned already, Japan, Australia, the US, the Gulf states. It is one of the finest cultural and economic assets that this country has, and it rightly has a reputation as a global leader. And I would also like to ask the Minister if she will commit to being that proactive, in backing the industry and all those who work in it. Carry forward the current levy negotiations with at least the suggested increase and with some urgency. And while negotiations between the Betting and Gaming Council and the BHA are resuming, to remember that it is the government that is the decision maker in this. It's the government that sets the red lines and makes the decisions. And finally, I'd like to finish on, could we have that independent review into the future of racing, into the funding model of racing, to ensure that in the years ahead we can arrive at a sustainable settlement that can save and promote racing into the future. Thank you, Sir Edward.
Good job.
Thank you, Sir Edward, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. And I declare, and I would also like to pay tribute to my honourable friend, the member for West Suffolk, for securing this important debate. I also declare an interest. Just 12 miles or so from here is Kempton Park Racecourse, which is just round the corner from where I live in Sunbury, in my constituency of Spelthorne. It is also where I enjoyed, as a guest of the Jockey Club, Jump Sunday last Sunday. It was a glorious and memorable day, and all my family will be back on Boxing Day to enjoy the King George VI and the Corto Star Novices Chase. But to the people of Spelthorne, the all-weather flat and turfed jumps courses are much more than that. The racecourse plays host to the weekly market and the fortnightly international antiques market, now in its 40th year, where the buyers from Shepperton Studios nearby create the sets for the around 31 sound stages that we have there. The annual total attendance for the racing is 20,000, multiplied many times by the global television audience, and for the antiques market a further 80,000, and the course regularly hosts visits from schools and police training and a sell-out fireworks display in early November. But at its heart, Kempton Park is about the racing and the 70 or so meetings held there every year, and it is every bit as important to our national fabric as Formula One, our world-leading track cyclists, and the Premier League. But as my honourable friend, the member for West Suffolk, has described, British horse racing, having led the world from its inception, is in danger of falling behind the leading group internationally. And where horse racing fails, it fails fast, and the government wants no piece of that. But enough of the stick, what about a bit of carrot? The Minister has a huge opportunity to be the jockey who rides in a winner, generating growth and prosperity for our nation. A swift and judicious settlement of the levy and protection from egregious taxation and regulation, and the Minister will lead a late run on the stand rail. Glory awaits. I hope she achieves it.
Sally Jameson.
Thank you to the Honourable Member of West Suffolk for securing this debate, and I refer members to my register of interests. Horse racing is a national treasure, and the UK is a world leader in this sport, which is worth more than 4.1 billion annually to the UK economy, as has already been identified today. And in Doncaster, our racecourse is a source of great pride. It is one of the oldest racecourses in the country, in operation since 1614, and has been home to the best race festival, the St Leger, since 1776. As well as being the largest racecourse in the country, it also acts as a concert venue, hosting iconic pop artists like the Saturdays, Madness and Jess Glynn. And it was it was also host to this year's election count, where I was duly elected to this place, and is without doubt the best count in the country. The importance of horse racing to Doncaster's culture and the economy cannot be overstated. On leaving Doncaster railway station, visitors to our city can see on the city's mural across the road our race horses. For 4 days each September, Ledger Way becomes impassable as locals and visitors alike flock to the racecourse, to the country's most iconic fixture. But we also have fixtures throughout the year, and in fact there were 36 in 2023. And these are always popular events for my constituents as well as visitors further afield. The racecourse is one of the jewels in our crown in Doncaster Central, and as a proud Doncaster native and regular attendee at my course, I hope that racing continues to flourish and uphold this important cultural and economic asset in my city. But to do this, it is important that the government set the necessary conditions to both sustain and flourish. The British Horse Racing Association and the last government reached a settlement, which I know has already been discussed today, on the betting levy, and the changes were due to take place in September. And following the election and welcome change in government, we have yet to see this implemented. I ask that the government pick up the discussions regarding this settlement so that the horse racing industry can have clarity on its future on the settlement and to ensure that racecourses like Doncaster are able to prepare and adapt to any changes. I also ask, as other honourable members have today, that the government pick up on the need for an independent review of the wider funding model for the sport after this year's settlement has taken effect, to ensure that the industry is able to succeed. And within that, I also repeat the ask for consideration to be given to applying the horse racing betty levy to all horse racing globally bet on by British customers. It is imperative that we don't underestimate the value of British horse racing to many constituencies like mine, and that we recognise that we must protect its interest so that racecourses like ours in Doncaster can continue to thrive and provide high-quality events and jobs for visitors and constituents for the years to come. Thank you.
Sir Edward, it's an honour to serve under your chairmanship. And can I also congratulate my honourable friend for securing this important debate. It's an honour to represent a constituency that includes both Newbury Racecourse and the Lambourne Valley, home to some of the finest trainers in the country. Lambourne Valley supports 34 trainers and employs over 750 full-time jobs, accounting for 30% of all jobs in that area. In addition to providing employment opportunities, these facilities make a major contribution to the local economy, with the gross value added from Lambourne estimated to be over £22 million. Now, nearly 15 miles south of the Lambourne Valley, in the southern part of my constituency, lies Newbury Racecourse. Unfortunately, our count wasn't able to be there this general election because there was an evening meet going on. But the venue does host 31 meets annually, including the Winter Festival, and over 23,000 people can be hosted both indoors and outdoors, generating an additional £5 million in gross added value. So, Sir Edward, it is clear that the industry is at the heart of my constituency, and it plays a vital role in ensuring the continued prosperity to the local economy. It does and can do more to support Labour's focus on economic growth, but it needs support from the government too. The Honourable Member for West Suffolk has clearly laid out 6 asks of the government, and whilst not wanting to repeat the excellent arguments my Honourable Member made, can I put on record my support for these measures too. In particular, can I briefly address the 6th point that my colleague raised regarding responsible gambling? I join him in agreeing that none of us want to see problem gambling going unchecked. But with the use of online platforms, surely it is not beyond reason for sites to allow different access for different betting needs. A horse owner recently remarked to me that he could buy a horse for £40,000 without any checks, but now has to provide bank statements in order to stake a couple of £1,000s on a race. We need to find a better balance between protecting those most at risk and allowing people to freely spend their money without the involvement of the state and greater regulations. Now, I recently had the privilege of meeting with trainers in Lambourne to discuss the importance of the industry to the local community and to learn more about their outstanding efforts in caring for both horses and the surrounding environment. During our conversation, they shared their concerns about financial difficulties they're facing, including being forced to sell land just to stay afloat. This situation is unacceptable, Sir Edward. Many people, both within my constituency and across the country, depend on this industry economically and socially. It's vital that the government takes action to ensure the survival and the continued success of the horse racing industry. Now, the 6 asks from the industry as raised by my honourable colleague will clearly help, but outside of direct interventions and tax changes, more needs to be done to support the industry indirectly. For example, balancing the support of rural economies like Lambourne whilst balancing environmental impacts of building in a national landscape is key. Without a sensible approach, the horse racing industry at my home will struggle to continue. Stables are struggling with recruitment because workers are unable to find places to live. The median house price in Newbury is £99,000 higher than the median house price as the country as a whole, starting at £385,000. Prices that are out of reach for most. If stables are unable to recruit staff due to high costs of housing, they may be forced to close for longer periods, leaving them without enough staff to care for and train the horses properly. Increasing the availability of social housing would be a significant step forward to addressing this issue. We've also seen nutrient neutrality rules bring developments to a halt across the country. also in Lambourne. And we urgently need the government to provide better advice and guidance to developers and local authorities so development can continue whilst protecting our precious waterways. Now, the community of Lambourne is currently developing its own neighbourhood development plan, and it includes with it a focus on the impact of planning policy on the horse racing industry. This forward-thinking approach to better inform planners and decision-makers of the unique aspects and challenges of the horse racing industry is welcomed and will add a real context when considering planning decisions. More financial support from the government is needed, along with a stronger commitment to build social housing. We must not overlook the incredible work that the horse racing industry continues to do. Newbury Racecourse has recently been named a finalist in 2 categories at the Racecourse Association Showcase Awards, recognised for its consistently high operating standards. The awards will take place on the 7th of November, and I wish Newbury Racecourse the very best of luck. Now, in concluding, Sir Edward, I declare that I'm due to visit the racecourse tomorrow for a behind-the-scenes tour, followed by an exciting afternoon of watching the races. Lovely. It's always exciting to experience the wonderful sport firsthand and witness the hard work of the jockeys, the trainers and the yard staff in action. Historic sports like horse racing are essential, not only for preserving traditions, but for sustaining the local economy. It's vital that we ensure its future for many years to come. Thank you.
Orinder, just.
Thank you, Sir Edward. It's a pleasure to be contributing to this debate under your chairmanship, and I would like to congratulate the honourable member for securing this debate. I am not a follower of horse racing. I'm a football fan. I'm a season ticket holder at Wolverhampton Wanderers, which unfortunately is not doing too well at the moment. But you do not have to be a supporter, a follower of horse racing to understand how important horse racing is to this country. Wolverhampton Racecourse is in my constituency of Wolverhampton West, and it is a very important part of the city. In addition to the statistics that have already been mentioned, one fact that has not been mentioned so far is that British horse racing does generate £300 million annually in taxation, which of course contributes to the economy. I have also had the pleasure of going around the racecourse in my constituency, and I have seen for myself what it does for the city and the contribution it makes to the local community. And one thing that was really very apparent to me was that the high standards that are applied to animal health and welfare and how well the horses are looked after. British horse racing is part of British culture and heritage, and the first recorded race was actually at Newmarket in 1622, and we have had a racecourse in Wolverhampton since 1825. Wolverhampton Racecourse was the first track to have floodlights, and we also have evening meetings as well, which again contributes to the community and getting the community engaged in what takes place at the racecourse. My honourable friend has mentioned the bands that have played at Doncaster Racecourse, so I'd like to also boast that in Wolverhampton Racecourse we've had such great bands as Madness, Kaiser Chiefs, UB40 and Human League. And the other important aspect of Wolverhampton Racecourse is that it's a venue. It's a venue for meetings, for conferences, for wedding receptions, and I myself have attended many wedding receptions there as well as meetings. And the other point is that in Wolverhampton Racecourse we also have a hotel. It's got 54 bedrooms, but the City of Wolverhampton Council has now given planning permission to increase the capacity to 170 bedrooms. Horse racing is a part of the economic, cultural and historic heritage of this country, and moreover, as far as I'm concerned, as the MP in Wolverhampton West, it's very much a part of the culture and the heritage of Wolverhampton West. So I would want to make sure that in no way does anything happen that diminishes the viability of Wolverhampton Racecourse, and I would like to see it flourishing further so that many people can attend horse racing there and also take part in other events that take place at the racecourse. So I would very much hope that the British racehorsing, British horse racing continues in the way that it does, and that Wolverhampton Racecourse continues to flourish. Thank you, Sir Edward.
Rankin.
Thank you, Sir Edward. It's an honour to take part in this debate under your chairmanship, and I would like to thank my honourable friend, the member for West Suffolk, for securing this important debate. I am very fortunate, Sir Edward, in that in my patch I have two world-renowned racecourses, Royal Windsor Racecourse and Ascot Racecourse. There is very rarely a better place to be on a Monday night, I would suggest to you, than Royal Windsor, and you're all very welcome. And Ascot, obviously, is famous the world over, particularly for its annual 5-day Royal Ascot event, an event which booked the national trend this year by seeing an increase rather than decline in attendance, which is a credit to all involved. For those who heard my maiden speech earlier this week, and I think maybe the member for member for Aintree, because I can't remember your constituency's name, the member for Aintree clearly did. The course was founded in 1711, and that course now has 330 years of history and has hosted some of the world's greatest races. And not only has Royal Ascot welcomed some of the greatest racehorses from countries all over the world, including the US, Hong Kong, and probably most significantly, the Australian supermare, Black Caviar, which is often considered one of the greatest racehorses of all time, which only left Australia once, and that was to compete in Britain at Royal Ascot's Diamond Jubilee Stakes in 2012. But Ascot is also, but it's not only equine royalty that Royal Ascot attracts. The point has been made, I think, about Britain's soft power by a few speakers. We get prominent royal figures from Dubai, from Bahrain, from Saudi Arabia, from pretty much ambassadors from the Commonwealth and indeed the world over, which makes horse racing an important tool for soft power for this country. The event showcases the best of Britain, the best of my Windsor constituency on the world stage, and is broadcast in over 180 territories internationally. As well as the prestige that comes with competing in Ascot's Group 1 races, it's obviously a significant financial contributor in increasing the stud horse's value, which remains unrivalled in international racing. And as a result, and some honourable members have already made this point, racing industry generates over £4 billion per year and employs more than 85,000 people. Royal Ascot alone welcomes 270,000 spectators across 5 days, and at peak time employs over 4,500 staff. The visits to my racecourse there make up 10% of national racing attendance, and that economic importance to my constituency and the surrounding areas cannot really be understated. In fact, Deloitte in 2014 assessed the economic impact of Ascot Racecourse just for that event in question at £68 million, just in off-course expenditure through food, through accommodation, through fashion, all of which drives money into our local economy and indeed into to London, our capital, which hosts many punters during these events. For years, the horse race betting levy has helped to fund grassroots sports of horse racing. It's not just about Ascot, perhaps, at the top of the tree. This all filters down into the grassroots sports, and it increases animal welfare and raises the profile of the sport. And at its best, that reciprocal relationship, symbiotic relationship, improves the sport and, in turn, the taking of betting companies. However, and I think this is a big risk that we should be highlighting to the Minister today, an increase in financial checks on customers risks pushing a lot of this gambling underground, and that means that less money will be reinvested in the sport and ultimately less money for the Treasury. So, of course, we should be doing what we can to ensure that a flutter on the races remains an innocent recreational sport, but we need to give support to the people who need it. But I would urge the government to tread carefully and acknowledge the unintended consequences of further regulation, particularly with problem gambling statistics at low levels in racing compared even to some national lottery products. Any further introduction should be frictionless and should involve working closely with relevant stakeholders whether that be the BCG or the BHA. Countries that have seen heavy regulations tend to see an increase in black marking betting, as you understand, and I know that PwC found that in Norway, increased state regulation of gambling led to 66% of all gambling taking place on the black market, and similar conditions have created huge black markets in Portugal, Bulgaria and Sweden. Yes, certainly.
I'm very grateful to my own friend giving way. He's making a powerful and important point. Would you agree with me that if we don't support prize money in UK racing and support the industry, not only will we drive the betting revenues away, but we'll also see more and more money going into other racing. Last year's Hennessy, a big race in the autumn I watched, there were 4 runners, and on television, all the racing that was being shown was from Ireland, where the horses had 20 entries. If we're not careful, we're going to end up killing the goose that lays the golden egg. Does he agree?
I think my honourable friend is quite right to say that. I'm a big cricket fan, and we've seen effectively what big money overseas can do to the heart of a sport that originated in this country and gives us a lot of power, and I think we've got to be very careful about what we do. And we should also obviously acknowledge that the black market, you know, if people are pushed to the black market, there'll be even fewer barriers to entry. And actually it might have a bad effect in terms of probable gambling overall. So, Sir Edward, we are at an important crossroads for British horse racing, and as bookies taking, which fund the levy, continue to decline, I think it is important that the government's approach to gambling respects individual liberty and drives growth rather than limits it. And just to expand on that. Yes, certainly, sir. So I hope the Chancellor will consider carefully introducing further punitive taxes on the gambling sector in next week's budgets, as that would further squeeze the horse racing industry. And seeing that the Labour Party has made growth its priority, I hope this government will be forthright in its support of the British horse racing, an industry that plays a vital role in my local economy, but also this country's unrivalled soft power.
Pleasure to serve with you as Chair, and I thank the Honourable Member for West Suffolk for securing this debate. So I'm proud to speak today about the remarkable contributions that the horse racing industry makes to our local economy and community in Epsom, and why it's vital that we support this industry. So for 245 years, Epsom has proudly hosted the Derby, one of the world's most prestigious and historic races. But the Derby is much more than just a race. It's a symbol of Epsom's rich heritage and tradition. And the annual Epsom Derby Festival draws over 40,000 people over 2 days in early June. And it's a spectacle like no other. It's not just the high-end hospitality experiences on offer, but in the middle of the racecourse, it's free to enter and open to the public, allowing everyone to participate. And Epsom is unique as a racecourse in that you can stand on the side of the track without paying a penny at all. And this accessibility is absolutely crucial in maintaining a sense of inclusion and community. And indeed, the Downs, a public access area surrounding the racecourse, serves the community all year round. So Epsom Racecourse maintains this land for public use, and local residents use the Downs from everything from exercising dogs to flying model planes, running. There are running races on there, and local clubs host archery, and there's even metal detecting groups up there as well. So Epsom is really a model of how a racecourse can contribute more broadly and become a resource for the community. And beyond the 11 race days that they host each year, the Epsom Training Gallops form the backbone of the local racing ecosystem. This training centre, owned and maintained by the racecourse, draws trainers to the area with 170 horses across 10 different yards. These independent yards are local businesses providing year-round employment and buying from local suppliers. The trainers have anywhere from 5 to 50 horses, and it's estimated that more than 100 people are directly employed in these yards, with even more jobs supported indirectly. So this training centre is a critical asset to Epsom and surrounding areas, and these trainers are here because of the facilities on the Downs. And without consistent racing, without prize money, and without a vibrant industry, these yards would simply struggle. The local economy benefits year-round from the employment, the use of local services and businesses, and the sense of vibrancy that these yards bring. Further, the racecourse is home to over 250 non-racing events throughout the year, as many other members have mentioned, supporting local businesses and community groups. So we have business meetings, exhibitions from dancing competitions, pigeon shows, recent marking celebrations for the 80th anniversary of D-Day landings, and it was the Count that was there where I was duly elected as well. The racecourse facilities bring investment into Epsom from outside, whilst also offering a really versatile space for the community to use as they need. The excitement of the derby is important, but the industry's real strength lies in the ecosystem it supports throughout the year. The Epsom training gallops attract trainers to local yards and sustain local jobs. Unfortunately, on occasion, festivities have got out of hand, and sadly this year we did see residents in Langley Vale frustrated by antisocial behaviour and vandalism, and even ball bearings being shot into their windows. However, thankfully, follow-up conversations with the police, residents and the Jockey Club will mean that in future security arrangements will be tightened for next year. But I also want to mention the unique structure of the Jockey Club, which owns Epsom and 13 other racecourses across the UK. Because the Jockey Club does reinvest every penny it makes back into racing. There are no external stakeholders taking a cut, and the more that the Epsom Downs is supported, the more they'll contribute to a cycle of investment that benefits both the local community and a sport as a whole. Prize money increases, which attracts better horses, bigger crowds and more interest in the area, and that success ripples out, supporting jobs, local businesses and community initiatives. So while Epsom Downs is best known for the derby, the racecourse brings so much more than that to the community. It's a year-round activity, a training centre for excellence and a cornerstone of our local economy and community. The horse racing industry here supports employment, attracts tourism and fosters a real sense of community pride. So whether it's through the world-class racing, the training gallops or the many events and opportunities available to locals, the industry remains an integral part of what makes Epsom special. So I agree with the 6 points that the Honourable colleague made in his speech, and particularly the need to strike a balance to prevent the problem gambling. And I hope that the Minister agrees that the racecourses like Epsom should be supported to continue to contribute to the local economy and community by reviewing the general funding model. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sir Edward. It is a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and I would like to thank and congratulate the Honourable Member for West Suffolk on securing this debate. I will also start by thanking Sporting John, the most recent horse that I was successfully bet on at Cheltenham. The fact that this was in November 2021 tells you something about my record of success. This is a debate on a subject of crucial importance to our country and also of central importance to my constituency. The breadth of the contribution of the horse racing industry to our nation's economy, our sporting life and our cultural life is undeniable. Indeed, and it's been mentioned earlier, the world's oldest classic race took place around a century before the first FA Cup final. The first Cheltenham Gold Cup took place in 1819, although I'm told it was very different in those days. The Honourable Member for West Suffolk has set out the economic contribution to the country, and I won't go over that. However, it would be a disservice to local areas like my constituency if we failed to do everything we possibly could to secure the future of the sport in a way that is good for racecourses, good for spectators, and good for the economy too in those local areas. Racecourses are understandably frustrated that agreements reached prior to the general election have been effectively timed out, and that's why it's important this debate is taking place today. Racecourses are rightly seeking clarity on the new government's position. On that note, I wholeheartedly back the Honourable Member for West Suffolk's call for reform to the levy. That is a crucial part of the solution. Our racecourses must be placed on a level playing field with their international competitors, and reform of the levy can help us support that goal. Extending the levy to cover bets placed in this country on races taking place abroad would help our own racecourses and those who rely on them to achieve long-term financial sustainability. So will the Minister confirm in her remarks that this is being considered alongside other reforms and potential for uprating the levy to help racecourses? Reforms to protect problem gamblers from the harm they encounter are indeed long overdue. It's good that there is cross-party consensus on that. But doing so in a way that protects racecourses is a key challenge for this government, and I know ministers will take that seriously. So will the Minister confirm that when the government seeks to address much-needed problem gambling, it will be done in a way that tackles the root cause by asking betting companies with the deepest pockets to bear the brunt of any changes and not racecourses? On local matters in Cheltenham, a study by the University of Gloucestershire found that the contribution to the 2022 Cheltenham Festival to our local economy was a staggering £274 million. That's just 4 days. And there are many other days of racing, which mean that the contribution to our town is so significant. The festival helps our brilliant local hospitality industry. Many of its members tell me that they exist entirely on those 4 days. If they weren't there, then we'd have far fewer excellent pubs, restaurants, nightclubs and bars. And that industry, of course, has suffered so much in recent years. That provides good jobs for local people. I'm a strong supporter of the racecourse, and that will continue. But I must state that those positive impacts that we have in Cheltenham also do come with antisocial behaviour, and that too often spills over into unacceptable behaviour, misogyny practices that many local people find distasteful. And it is to the racecourse's credit that they have actually campaigned proactively to try to bring an end to those things that local people find so difficult. The Love Our Turf campaign is helping, and as part of that I have for the past 2 years declared a war on we during race week. That is against the legions of men, and it's all men, who feel it's appropriate to urinate in our town centre in public on their way to the racecourse in broad daylight. The use of hydrophobic paint on town centre walls and extra public loos have helped reduce reports of public urination. The racecourse's deployment of staff on routes to and from the town centre has also helped. But we must go further. The war on we will be fought again this coming March. Also on the subject of undesirable impacts, there is no demand for sexual entertainment venues in Cheltenham Town Centre for 51 weeks of the year. But during race week, the on-the-ground impacts of the Local Government Miscellaneous Provisions Act 1982 appears to be that sexual entertainment venues can pop up in your local pub or bar with little reference to the local authority. This places local councils in an invidious position. If they award a licence to an establishment, it is unpopular, divisive and unwanted by local people. But if they don't, SEVs pop up seemingly in a haphazard way that places women at much greater risk of harm. The Minister, I think, today probably cannot comment on this. However, I would be grateful if she would raise it with appropriate colleagues. None of this is to take away from the importance of the debate that we're having today, but I am not able, as the member of Cheltenham, to stand up and support National Hunt racing in the way that I want to without raising these points of difficulty, and it is not the racecourse's fault. Local people in Cheltenham will know it is not the racecourse's fault. It is the fault of many different authorities that need to get a grip. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to make that point. This does not take away from my support for the racecourse. Another matter that I think is important to raise, and my honourable friend, the member for Glastonbury and Somerton, raised it, is animal welfare. The industry takes this so seriously, and it is often really badly misrepresented by those who would seek to undermine the good work being done. The Jockey Club has made significant improvements, and that is worthy of praise. It's important to get that on the record today. The height of hurdles at Cheltenham has been lowered in recent years, and that is important to note. And I know that the industry is going to do more in the coming years. They are listening. Chair, an industry worth £4.1 billion that supports 85,000 jobs and which brings so much joy to so many people from all walks of life must be cherished. I know that the feeling in the room today is that there is consensus across party, and I know ministers will have heard that. I'm pleased to have been able to lend support by the way of comments that I've made in this important debate, just as I will lend my support to my picks at the Countryside Day at the November meeting in 3 weeks' time. Thank you, Sir Edward.
Very French.
Thank you. Thank you, Sir Edward. It's always a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. And can I start by thanking my honourable friend for West Southwark for securing this debate. And I would also like to congratulate him on being elected as one of the new co-chairs of the Racing and Bloodstock All-Party Group, alongside my honourable friend for Liverpool Walton, representing the fantastic Aintree Racecourse, which we all know is home of the Grand National. And for his information, my last winner was Silver Birch a long time ago. I can't tell you who comes second or third. Yeah, there you go. I do look forward to working together to help protect the future of British horse racing as a cultural and economic asset for the whole country. Having visited my honourable friend's constituency not too long ago, home to the famous Newmarket Racecourse and many world-class yards, as we've heard already, I know this is certainly the case there. And I confirm that he is quickly becoming the Member of Parliament for not only West Suffolk, but also for horse racing, a title that I know that many will be jealous of today, including myself. Mr. Chairman, putting aside the cultural and sporting importance of horse racing for a moment, the horse racing industry has a considerable economic benefit to the United Kingdom. As we've heard from contributions already today, we've seen this from Ascot, Kempton Park, Ludlow, Aintree, Epsom, Wolverhampton, Newmarket, Fakenham, Newcastle, Doncaster, Newbury, Windsor and Cheltenham. And if I've missed anyone, I apologise, but it just shows the breadth of the contribution across our great country. And according to the British Horse Racing Authority, the racing industry has direct revenues, as we've heard, in excess of £1.47 billion and make a total contribution to the UK economy of £4.1 billion. In fact, it was the second largest sport behind only football in respect of attendance, employment and revenues generated annually. More than 5.5 million people attended more than the 1,500 individual race meetings across England, Scotland and Wales in 2019. And whilst attendance has not quite recovered from the pandemic, in 2022 almost 5 million people attended racing events across our great country. I think the value of the industry in pure economic terms is clear. However, the industry contributes so much more to life in Britain than just tax revenues. It is a core part of British culture, which we have successfully exported around the world. And I have had the pleasure of witnessing firsthand on my travels in years gone by some of these amazing horse racing courses that have appeared in other parts of the world. And I would like to add that I did pay for that myself before I was a member in this place. Horse racing is synonymous with a flutter, and the gambling industry is a key supporter of horse racing, providing the lifeline of racing's income streams. And together, both are key to the non-financial benefits that I have just mentioned. Mr. Chairman, research shows that 82% of betting shop customers visit their local shop at least once a week. And of those, 89% then go on to visit other shops whilst on the high street. At a time when we have a clearer picture about loneliness in our society than ever before, we cannot take the social contribution of horse racing via high street betting shops and visits to the course for granted. Under the previous Conservative government, we made the first major governmental contribution to the national conversation around loneliness and the importance of social connections. And I know from my own time working for a bookmakers when I was a student that there are many people living in our communities who rely on these interactions with betting shop staff to keep them going. And while the state's gamble may not be high, I know many pensioners whose 10p lucky 15s is the highlight of their day, win or lose. Those who do visit a betting shop or a racecourse are helping to support the horse racing industry, with the horse racing betting levy, sponsorship and media rights raising around £350 million for the sport overall. However, from those conversations that I've already had as the Shadow Minister for Gambling, I know that there is an increasing tension in how the levy operates, and we've heard about that already today. I'm sure members here will already know that the horse racing betting levy results in betting firms giving up 10% of their gross profits from horse racing back to the sport. This is on top of the 15% betting duty that the Betting and Gaming Council's members pay to the Exchequer. Moreover, those members are expected to contribute a record £150 million in levy payments for the 2023-2024 year, the third consecutive year that the levy contributions have increased. Despite these increased payments from betting to racing, betting turnover is down 17% in the 3 quarters to date for this financial year. To further demonstrate the decline in racing, it is estimated in 2007 that 17% of people enjoyed betting on horse racing, but that has fallen to 10% in 2018. Mr. Chairman, this is causing great concern, as we've heard today, amongst not only racecourses, but also the Betting and Gaming Council members. And I have even heard of reports of some operators already withdrawing offers, such as paying extra places on races and best odds guaranteed. And some members have gone so far as not offering prices on horse racing meetings altogether. This is not sustainable or good for racing. The previous Conservative government was committed to the long-term success of horse racing in Britain, and in line with the statutory requirement we set out in 2017, in April this year we began the required review into the rate at which the levy is charged. Unfortunately, the work being done on this has been stopped dead in its tracks given the change in government. Since the election, there has been a new appointment to the Horse Racing Betty Levy Board, with Anne Lambert appointed interim chair, but otherwise the industry has been left in limbo by this new government. On the 29th of July, Baroness Tycross, the new part-time Minister for Gambling, said in the other place, "It's too soon for me to commit to the shape of future policy." Well, Mr. Chairman, as we now enter national hunt season, the industry needs clarity and it needs it soon, as we've heard from other members today. So can the Minister tell us what support she and her department will be offering to the horse racing industry, financial or otherwise, and if she will help in the negotiations on the new level at which the horse racing betting levy is to be set? Will she bring forward some of the reforms set out in the Gambling White Paper, which will help level the playing field and promote growth in the sector? What conversations has she had with government colleagues to make sure that the sport is not damaged by sky-high tax rises in the upcoming budget? What measures is she taking with industry to stop the growth of the black market and to make sure that punters can continue to have a flutter freely and safely? And what support is she offering horse racing to help grassroots development, equine research and participation in the sports? Horse racing is vital for so many reasons. Its economic contribution to the exchequer, its social and sporting contribution, and the community it provides in mostly rural areas. From raising a foal to the final furlong, horse racing is an essential part of life for people and places up and down our country, as we've heard in today's debate. The industry is not just there for sport, but it's also a vital part of maintaining and promoting horse welfare across the country. The BHA's expenditure supports horse welfare, with one of their goals being to drive high-quality care and support for the horse in racing. In total, the Horse Racing Betting Levy Board spends around £3.5 million annually on horse-related areas, such as educational research and on a number of horse welfare projects. And as we have heard already today, the Jockey Club has also made changes over the years to ensure that the safety of horses is improved at our tracks. Moreover, the BHA is responsible for the safety of horses at races in Britain and works with animal welfare organisations such as the RSPCA and World Horse Welfare to keep racecourses, as I've just said, as safe as possible for the horses, and their cross-industry horse welfare board makes recommendations including a multi-year strategy to improve wolf welfare. Earlier this year, alongside Great British Racing, the BHA launched a new campaign, Horse PWR, to promote the facts around welfare in horse racing and to challenge and correct inaccurate information out there in the public. As the first of the Horse Welfare Board's 5-year strategy comes to a close in the new year, I hope to work with the BHA as it begins work on its next 5-year strategy. And for anyone listening today who has not had the opportunity to visit their local yard, I would recommend highly going to their nearest stables to see the fantastic passion and work that goes on. And I would also recommend a trip to the National Stud, which really is like visiting a 5-star hotel. But make sure you take some polos to keep the horses happy if you're allowed that close to them. From end to end, the equestrian economy is valued near to £8 billion, almost half of which is not the racing industry. Horse racing, as we've heard, is much more than just a sport. It is a true British pastime that has a permanent place in the hearts of many people across the country, me included, and it must continue to be supported by this government as it was by the previous. Therefore, in finally closing, I urge the government, after a slow start, to leave the stalls, gallop into action as if you are Cato Star cruising up the Cheltenham Hill, and to give British horse racing the certainty and future it deserves to remain internationally competitive. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. It is a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, Sir Edward. I'd like to begin by referring to my register of members' interest, having taken part in a charity bet earlier this year and indeed attending Donny races just this time last year. I'd like to begin by congratulating the Honourable Member for West Suffolk, on securing this important debate to support on the future and on the support for horse racing. I'd like to congratulate him and indeed my honourable friend on being elected co-chairs of the all-party groups, and the department looks forward to working with them both. We've heard from members across the House, and the Shadow Minister did an excellent job of listing them all. I'm going to leave that bit to him. I'm going to speak in broad terms about the issue before addressing some of the specific points that the Honourable Gentleman made, and indeed members across the House. So, His Majesty's Government recognises the significant contribution that racing makes to British culture and its particular importance to the British economy. As has been rightly mentioned today, it plays a central role in the livelihoods of many different communities. On a personal level, I am well aware from my time as the Shadow Minister for Gambling of the strength of support across this House for horse racing and of concern around its finances. In February this year, I took part in a debate in this chamber on the very subject, which was prompted by a petition signed by over 100,000 people. The employment it supports across racecourses, training yards, breeding, operations and related sectors reflects a powerhouse industry that is respected at home and abroad. Horse racing is the second biggest sport in the UK in terms of attendance. According to the British Horse Racing Authority, racing is worth over £4 billion annually to the economy in direct and indirect and associated expenditure. British racing and breeding enjoys a reputation as a global leader and is promoted worldwide as part of the Great Britain and Northern Ireland campaign. This recognises the cultural and economic importance of horse racing to the UK and the role it plays as a soft power asset. I'd like to outline the measures that this government is taking to protect horse racing and the valuable economic and cultural contribution it makes. And I want to take this opportunity to highlight the importance of the horse racing betting levy, which has been mentioned, of course, a number of times in the debate today. Given the long-standing acknowledgement of the symbiotic relationship between racing and betting, racing is the only sport with a direct levy which is overseen by government. This is therefore our most direct lever for supporting the sport, but it needs to reflect the common interests of both sides of the relationship. The Horse Race Betting Levy Board collects the levy and applies the money, as I know members will know, raised for one or more of the following purposes: supporting breeds of horses, the advancement or encouragement of veterinary science and education, and the improvement of horse racing. The largest proportion of the levy is used to support prize money, and in fact prize money is a means of injecting funds into the wider racing ecosystem through the employment of trainers, jockeys, work riders and a whole host of people in over 500 training yards who are involved in caring for horses and putting on race days. The ability of prize money to cover the costs of training is a key consideration for owners deciding to enter and remain in the industry. This is seen in the board's recent announcements that they have budgeted to contribute £72.7 million to prize money for racing fixtures in 2025, an increase of £2.2 million since 2024 and around £13 million more than each of the pre-COVID years of 2018 to 2019. The horse racing betting levy has evolved in step with the betting industry since it was introduced in the 1960s. In 2017, the previous government extended the levy to online bookmakers and fixed the rate at 10% so that it can no longer have to be negotiated on each year. The 2017 reforms almost doubled the amount of levy collected from 49.8 million to 95 million, and it has continued to perform well, collecting 105 million in 2023 to 2024. I'd like to place on record my thanks to the Horse Racing Betting Levy Board, who are continuing to do an excellent job, especially in difficult circumstances, following the sad death of their chair, Paul Darling, in August this year. And I understand it was his memorial this week, and I send my thoughts to his family. The government will continue to work with the levy board and the wider industry to maximise the benefits of the levy to ensure that it continues to deliver for the sector. The previous government undertook a review that concluded in April, and I recognise the significant work undertaken by both the racing and betting industries to secure a sustainable future for the sport. I'm aware that as part of that review, the British Horse Racing Authority presented its case that there is a significant gap in its funding, stating they're unable to compete with jurisdictions such as Ireland and France. Now, the Minister for Gambling has met with representatives from both the horse racing and betting industries, has encouraged a voluntary deal that fairly reflects the relationship between racing and betting, and will be writing to both parties soon. I understand both parties agreed the value of a growth fund for the sport, and we look forward to hearing progress on this in the future. I think it's fair to say that racing and betting should also maximise income from other sources, as the levy represents just 6% of the income, with far greater proportions earned from owners, breeders, racegoers, media rights deals and sponsorship. The government welcomes recent changes to the fixture list that are designed to grow the sport, engage new and existing customers and bring an additional £90 million to racing by 2028. And I was also encouraged to see horse racing being showcased in the recent TV documentaries Horsepower and Champions Full Gallop. Now, I would like to move to the specific points raised by the Honourable Member whose debate this is, and obviously a number of other members raised similar points. So firstly, I think, as I hopefully have made clear in my speech so far, I absolutely agree that British horse racing is an international success story. I'm delighted to put my support on the record for it. As I said, I was at Donny Races last year, and indeed the year before that, I was at York Races, and my good friend, the late great Jim Andrews, who was my agent, that was one of the last days we spent together before he sadly passed away. So I pay tribute to him, but I have very fond memories of York Races for that reason. And indeed, I know the huge impact it makes to not just of our economy, but to communities up and down the country. In response to questions 2 and 3, in the absence of any current legislative opportunity to
propose amendments to the levy, the government is inviting betting and racing industries to resume negotiations on a voluntary deal. We think this is the best and fastest option of getting additional money flowing to the sport, and I share the Honourable Gentleman's hope that we will not go back to square one and that the parties will reflect on areas where there was an agreement. Now, the previous negotiations have been discussed in this debate. I don't think they were publicised at the time, but they've obviously been discussed today in detail, and I believe they resulted in an offer of an additional 1.5% from the betting industry, which racing agreed was reasonable. There was further agreement that the majority of those additional funds should be targeted towards a growth fund to generate interest in the sport. Now, the Minister for Gambling is happy to continue dialogue with both parties, and indeed, if racing would like to hold its own independent view, that is something that the government would welcome. To move to his fourth question, in terms of reform to the scope of the levy to include international races, which has been discussed by a number of members, I know there are strong arguments on both sides, but I think we should focus on what is achievable in the short to medium term. Whilst it is true that racing in other jurisdictions benefits from British racing in a way that is not reciprocated, the funding mechanisms in both Ireland and France operate more centralised state-led systems, and there are fewer opportunities for the commercial deals which we have in Great Britain. Now, to move to his fifth question, the Honourable Gentleman might be new to this place, but he is experienced and seasoned actor or character. I'm trying to be, to be diplomatic in the Westminster and Whitehall world. So he knows, he tempts me, but he knows I can't comment on plans for the upcoming budget. But to move to his sixth question, the one around addressing the issue of problem gambling proportionally. He will have heard the answer the Secretary of State gave him in the Chamber last week. I think it's incredibly important, as the member for Somerset and Frome said, to strike a balance when dealing with problem gambling. Nearly half the population gambled in the last 4 weeks, and so it's important that, of course, we provide support and we tackle problem gambling, but we do that in a balanced way. A number of honourable members have raised the issue of frictionless checks. Now, the Gambling Commission, as members will know, are leading the pilot work on financial risk checks. We will be watching those pilots with interest, but I have heard members' concerns. I will reflect them to the Gambling Minister. On the points on animal welfare, and that specific point on the number of vets, I will make representations to my colleagues in DEFRA on both of those points. On the specific question that the member for Cheltenham raised, I will ask the Gambling Minister to write to him. And I think the Shadow Minister made a really important point around loneliness. I've visited most of the betting shops in my own constituency of Barnsley South, and I've seen the first-hand the difference they make in helping support and combat loneliness. And as the Minister responsible for loneliness, I take that really seriously. I'd say gently to him, we don't have a part-time gambling minister, but we do have a gambling minister that sits in the other place. I answered a number of questions on the broad support the government have, but I'm happy to facilitate a meeting or a letter from the gambling minister to the honourable gentleman. The government remains committed to supporting British horse racing. We believe it is vital to our economy. It brings joy to many people. I know the Gambling Minister will look forward to continuing to engage with stakeholders in this area. And I think today's debate has highlighted the huge benefit that racing has to communities up and down the country. Thank you.
Does the honourable member wish to say a few words summing up?
Unfortunately for you, Mr. Chairman, I would like that very much. I wanted to say thank you to everybody who participated in the debate. It's been a really constructive debate, and I think we've learned a lot, and not just about the dubious music tastes of my honourable friend, the member for Spelthorne. I took the hint from the honourable member for Liverpool Walton, and I will extend an invitation to all honourable members in the debate to come see the delights that Newmarket has to offer. I thought there was really strong agreement among all of us, actually, across different parties on each of the 6 issues that I raised, and I won't repeat them. But I just wanted to say something in response to the Minister's answer, for which I'm grateful. I note and I'm appreciative of the warmth of the words from her and from the Secretary of State in the main chamber last Thursday. And I also appreciate that it is early days for the government, and ministers often need time to familiarise themselves with with the challenges. But I would just gently like to say that the ministers are in the government now. They're not shadow ministers, and being in government does mean that there is power, and it may not be enough to convene conversations between the interested parties and hope that we might be able to reach voluntary agreements. And in the end, ministers often need to decide. And so on each of the points that she raised, I would say that I would like to encourage her and the Secretary of State to just be a little bit firmer, because it's very easy to for us all to agree on the ends, but when we do agree on the ends, we've got to have the determination on the means. And sometimes that will involve making decisions that some of the interested parties may not like to hear. And sometimes people, I think, assume that the racing industry and the gambling industry's interests are coterminous, and they are not. And therefore, I invite ministers to intervene on those sorts of issues. And just specifically on the issue of including overseas races in the levy, I thought there was, as with other issues, there was a high degree of consensus among all of those making a contribution. There is obviously an opportunity coming up. I don't know if the budget is put to bed, but there will be a finance bill that follows. And this is the easiest change that could be made in the world. It is, I think, cost-free from a government perspective. And it is something that makes sense for British racing. And while the Minister did note the differences in the structures and the financing for racing in countries like Ireland and France compared to our own, I think this debate has exposed the extent to which the industries in those countries stand in an advantageous position compared to our own. So I would just like to press the Minister once more on that. But I would like to thank everybody for participating in the debate, and to you, Mr. Chairman, for your excellent skills. Thank you.
Well, it's been a pleasure to chair this debate. I'm only sorry that nobody has mentioned the best race course in the country, Market Raisin. The question is that this House has considered government support for the horse racing industry. As many of that opinion say aye. On the contrary, no. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. Sitting suspended till 3 o'clock.
we should have started. Right, okay.